So the Khorne Berzerkers datasheet has been updated, but which are the stronger and tougher servants of Khorne, the new rules or the old? Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Khorne Berzerkers. The new rules for the World Eaters got leaked towards the end of last week, and maybe some of the most interesting changes were to the Khorne Berzerker datasheet, which got a fair few fairly impressive stat line buffs, but also got a bit more expensive and lost their iconic Fight Twice rule from Blood for the Blood God. It was kind of interesting to see the mixed feelings in the comments as to whether or not the Berserker squad was actually stronger or weaker than it was before, so I thought it might be fun to take a video to actually compare the two, talk about what was gained and lost, and maybe look at how the unit performs in a few different areas of damage and durability. Just broadly speaking, here's the new Berserker datasheet. They're 22 points now and their squads for 5 to 10. Most of their stats stay the same, they're still hitting at strength 5, though they've gone up to 5 attacks now with that, and they've gained the much sought after 2 wound increase that Chaos Marines have waited for ages. The other thing that they've altered is that all of their chainswords and chain axes now count as one consolidated profile at strength user AP-2 and damage 1 for Berserker chain blades. In practice, I think just about every squad will usually be striking at AP-3, as you can buy in a Chaos icon for just 5 points, and that improves the AP of the entire squad, which seems easily worth it on a bunch of melee specialists to me. Otherwise, they've got the Mark of Khorne for the +1 strength in the first round of melee, so most of their attacks will usually be still hitting at strength 6. So say with a squad of 10 of these in World Eaters, you'd be expecting something like 60 attacks at strength 6, AP-3 on the charge. I found it interesting just how many things that they'd kind of gained and lost. On the list of positives, we've got the +1 wound, which will be good against small arms. The attacks have gone up to 5, but they no longer have the option of buying in an extra chainsword, and they lost Hateful Assault, both of which mitigates the big attacks boost all that much. AP-3 is very nice. AP-1 can be kind of situational now, as if you're fighting Space Marines then it won't matter. The World Eaters trait got buffed itself, so you now get the attacks when you are charged as well, which I think is kind of a big deal. They got an extra pip of leadership, and all their attacks are at strength 6 now rather than just some of them, but only on the first round of melee. In terms of what they lost, perhaps the biggest thing was losing the option to fight twice. I think a fair few people are sad to see that go on the standard foot troops of Khorne. It gave you a massive amount of extra damage and also extra movement as well from piling in and consolidating. It meant that in World Eaters, theoretically, you would have had standard Khorne Berzerkers swinging with up to 8 attacks in a single assault phase, where the current ones only have 6, even if they are at much better AP. The points increasing from 18 points to 22 is quite a big deal as well. That'll make them a fair bit less efficient both in damage and defense, and really kind of muddies the water with comparing the two. They've lost the option to take power fists and things on the unit champion, which was also very powerful when you could fight twice. The max squad size is a bit smaller, though I don't think many people are running big 11+ man squads of Berserkers. It appears that they can never get other Legion traits besides World Eaters now, and they can't take the Icon of Wrath for the 10 points reroll charges ability. That was nice, though potentially something that you could command point reroll if you weren't doing loads of multiple charges across the board. Finally, and one that we can't really compare properly now, are trading Death to the False Emperor for the Chaos Doctrine type rules that haven't been unveiled. Death to the False Emperor was a very nice combat boost against just about everything. Admittedly, the doctrines might be a bit weaker for Khorne Berzerkers themselves, as they'll be only getting the exploding 6s on turn 3 onwards if it follows the same Space Marine pattern. That would be a bit of an adjustment for the army as a whole though, as you'd be able to get the exploding 6s on ranged weapons too. Overall, there's quite a lot going on both sides. What I was quite interested to do was to compare the durability and damage changes between the two units, to see who comes out on top out of two very similar pointed squads. Just for the sake of comparison, we've got 12 of the old Berserkers who are taking the extra chainswords for 1 extra point, kind of a no-brainer in my mind, seeing as it gives you 2 extra attacks per fight phase, and also taking a Power Fist on the unit champion, also very nice in World Eaters, as that's potentially 8 Power Fist attacks right there. I think the squad's a bit bigger than you'd normally want to field, but I think it's fine for math comparison against 10 of the new Berserkers who are just taking that Chaos icon for the extra AP. Durability wise, both of them got a bit tougher with Armour of Contempt in the recent past. Basically, whether or not they're tougher depends on what they're being shot by. Against single damage 1 attacks or mortal wounds, typically the new Berserkers are going to have around about a third increase in survivability. Those weapons just really aren't going to be anywhere near as good at shifting them. To be fair, the old style ones were ridiculously vulnerable to things like Smite. you could have entire very elite squads hoovered away pretty quickly. Interestingly though, against damage 2 or better weapons, for example overcharged plasma, that would take 21.6 hits to clear the old squad but 18 to clear the new squad, just because that's going to go through 2 wound marines just as easily as 1 wound ones. Because the new Berserkers cost more, it's effectively a 20% decrease in durability, because the extra wound just doesn't matter against those weapons. Finally, for things like las cannons with damage d6, it's actually kind of equivocal. You've got a small chance of not killing a 2 wound marine if you roll a 1 on the damage result, and that actually weighs up pretty evenly against the points increase, so you'll round about take the same number of las cannon hits to wipe out the squad. Overall, I'd say there's not really very much in it. They're far better against 1 wound and mortal wound damage, though things like overcharged plasma and anything else that's flat 2 damage they've actually got less durable against, and there does tend to be a fair amount of high-flying plasma and melter weapons going around in 40k at the moment. Looking at damage next, and we'll compare the same squad. We're going to assume that they are actual World Eaters Khorne Berzerkers for this, meaning that the old squad gets 66 attacks at strength 6, AP-1 and damage 1, 24 at strength 5, AP-1 and damage 1, and 8 attacks with that power fist at damage 2. To go up against this, the new squad are a lot more simple, with just 61 damage 1 attacks at decent AP. Generally speaking, it looks like the old squad is typically going to be better against anything that's very light infantry, just due to that massive volume of AP-1 attacks, or against tougher vehicles that have a bad save, and the power fist definitely does some work to get them ahead there. The two squads seem to be even on Space Marines with Armour of Contempt, but the new squad seems to pull ahead a fair bit against Custodian Guard, just because so many of their attacks are strength 6 and therefore go about wounding them on 3s. Overall, I'd broadly say that it looks like the older squad are a little bit better, but I would bear in mind that there's some pretty big trade-offs. Realistically, if you did slam the old squad into a big scary enemy unit, they'd do the first half of the attacks, then the enemy unit might well interrupt for 2 CP, and then maybe kill the Khorne Berzerkers before they even get to strike their second time. If you smash the new unit into the enemy, then they wouldn't get that option. As I mentioned, the pile in and consolidate thing can be quite a big deal, particularly on troops, berserkers and world eaters with Auspex, or just tying up other enemy units, and the new squad does a little bit better in comparison if they're being charged, as previously you wouldn't have got that extra attack if they were charged, but now with the new version of Butcher's Nails you do. The new squad probably has another slight advantage if you're not playing as world eaters as well, as the old one got to double dip on the Butcher's Nails advantage, so they could get an extra 2 attacks out of a fight phase, whereas the new squad can only get 1 out of the World Eaters trade either way. If you do look at the math of them actually being charged rather than doing the charging, the new squad is pretty much ahead on all fronts, only slightly so against light things or very tough things, but really quite good against any sort of medium infantry. I do think that this is probably less likely than doing the charging, as often if your opponent's charging you, then they'll probably have a good chance of wiping out a lot of your models before you get to strike, but I think it is still quite important. Overall, between the two, I'd say that they're still pretty close. The huge amount of low AP attacks and the slightly fewer high AP attacks both seem to balance out quite nicely, and the Power Fist narrows the gap even more. So overall, having had a look at the numbers, I'd probably argue that this is perhaps more of a side grade for Khorne Berzerkers than a direct upgrade, though maybe that's not too unexpected if this is just a holdover datasheet for the World Eaters Codex, where they'll presumably be getting a whole ton more support. Durability wise, they're tougher versus damage 1 but weaker against damage 2, and the new datasheet is better against heavy infantry and when they're being charged, but less so in other situations. Seems pretty close to me, but I think having a whole load of high AP attacks isn't too bad in the current meta at least, particularly with other Space Marine factions and their Armour of Contempt Terminators. In any case, I'll be interested to hear what you think down in the comments below. Do you prefer the new datasheet or the old, and why? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming, with new ones out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, and you can find that down in the video description. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways, with the chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds interesting, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.